Hi, in this video I want to show you about gradient maps, one of my favorite tools in Photoshop. Lots and lots of possibilities. I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to work with gradient maps using this cute little pygmy nuthatch. One is one is kind of wild and crazy. Another is, the two others are a great way to create more nuanced and complex black and white photos. The first is sort of the traditional way that I learned, and the second is a way that one of you developed for me. Or not for me, I shouldn't say, but for her work, and that I'm going to share with you. And I'll credit her for that. Okay, so starting off with this cute little pygmy nuthatch, we'll just go ahead and jump right into the gradient map. Let me show you where it is. Now, the gradient map is different from the gradient tool or even the gradient here or the gradient on the toolbar. It's called the gradient map. And the essential difference with the gradient map is, well, hopefully you can see right away, is that instead of creating, and actually let's go ahead and go back and turn that off for a second so I can show you the difference. If you create a gradient, it is going to simply create a gradient across your image. And I've got it on green now just so you can see it easily. But you can see it just puts an overlay, a gradient over your image. The gradient map, on the other hand, actually maps the tonality of the image. So going dark and light wherever the image goes dark and light. Now, you might not like this effect. That's okay. There are so many different possibilities with this, and I'm going to show you just a few that I think by the end of the video you might be sold. Okay, first of all, let's talk about your options, because all this defaulted to this green to black gradient map. You can make this gradient map any color or combination of colors that you want. It's quite amazing. I'm not going to dither for this video. That's a little different thing that probably won't be useful for you right now. But I'm going to go ahead and reverse it so that it's a little bit more traditional, because this area is the shadows and this area is the highlights. So with this gradient map, at least now, the shadows are mapped, the dark greens are mapped to the shadows of the image and the light greens are mapped to the lighter areas. If I click it open though, you'll find that I can actually do this, and right now it's foreground to background. That's my little name. You can do this in a number of different ways. You can add just a black to white, and notice that that's a reversed one. There's colors. There's all these presets that you can grab and add in different color ranges. And there are, woo, that's kind of wild. So you can play around here. There are neutrals, there's pastels, there's grays, there's anything that you want. I'm going to go ahead and stay for now. I'm just going to pick this one so I can show you that you can also customize and make this gradient map anything you want. So with this open, I'm just going to click here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll leave it on the yellow just so you can see, and I'm going to make it sort of a dark yellow. I prefer the shadows to be mapped dark, and I think you'll see the advantage of that. I'm just going to go with this brown, and then I'm going to remap, and notice this is, I can save this as a new map. This isn't changing the preset. I'm just creating a new one. I'll just go ahead and make this, oh, that's kind of fun, kind of a light pink. And you can even, it gets wilder yet. Oops, I don't want to do that. You can add a midtone. So you can see you can go all the way from this dark brown through a blue in the midtones, through the pink in the other area. And you can also use this to slide it over to sort of create where those go. Now I'm going to just modify it a little bit because I kind of like to have my midtones midtone. This is very traditional. You can do it another way. And I want my lights to be lighter. Okay, so I've got that on there. That's kind of wild and crazy. I'll just click OK, and we'll go back to the layers. And you're going, well, okay, but I don't really get why I would do this. Okay, well, I'm going to show you one more wild thing, and then I'm going to show you the very practical applications of this, especially if you're making black and white images. So once you have that on there, let's start playing with our, and of course, as always with blending modes, some of them are really cool, some of them not so much. Oh, I kind of like that. So this is, again, a little bit wild, but maybe not quite as wild as just having the gradient map. I can move this down in opacity. I can play with it in a lot of different ways. It's just mapping over that same image and blending them in. But that is not yet the coolest thing. Let me go ahead and take this opacity all the way up, go back to normal just for now, so we can stick with this same gradient map. I'm going to turn it off just for a second, and I'm going to go ahead and add, and this is method number 1, I'm going to add a black and white layer and turn this whole thing black and white. This is an adjustment layer, very important that you do it that way, and I can play, I think I have some, there we go, I can play with my sliders. As you might recall, I can move things up and down, there we go. Just play with the contrast. So it's just a plain old black and white layer. And if I put the gradient map over, of course, it's just a plain old gradient map again. But if I put a gradient map over a black and white layer, you can see that it's quite different because it's actually mapping it. We'll go with soft light. And if we bring the opacity down, we begin to get sort of a dual-toned black and white image. Now, I've created quite a wild gradient map. You can create a more regular gradient map, or a map that is designed to give you the kind of black and white tonality you want. So, for instance, we'll just go back into this gradient map, and let's do really the kind of map that I generally do. I like to have, and everybody has their own preferences, I like to do kind of a dark blue shadow. There we go. And I'm just going to actually cancel that. I'm just going to pull the midtone out for now. I can just take it off. And I'm going to do a warm, there we go, a warmer highlight. And I can modify this a bit, maybe bring the cool areas up a little bit more. Oh, I like that. And you can see that now it looks like sort of a sepia-toned, warm, dual-toned black and white photo. Now, there's lots of advantages to this one. It's just a lot more interesting than plain old black and white. And it's more interesting, by the way, you might think about tinting it, but that's kind of a flat overall color. You're going to get a much more nuanced and more complex black and white if you do it with the gradient map. And one of the big advantages to this, I know we're not printing right now in this class, but one of the big advantages is that you can actually, when you're printing on a photo printer, you're going to get a stronger, more complex, and more color accurate image if you print it as a color print with this gradient overlay than if you print it as a black and white print with just gray toned inks. Okay, so that's method number 1. Method number 2 I thought was really kind of wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and just, which is a little bit simpler, and I haven't yet, I will admit, I need to do some more research because I haven't yet figured out what the possible advantages or disadvantages are of each of these methods. But this comes to you from Darla Parthamore, who has been experimenting with gradient maps for a while. And so what she does is, instead of bothering with the black and white layer, she adds a gradient map, and she has created a gradient map that she likes, and she puts it directly on. So she does, I'll just make up my own, I should actually get hers. She makes like a dark gray, I'll just do a dark gray cool highlight, and, or a shadow, excuse me, and we'll do a warmer highlight. We'll go a little higher. And you can see that you can just map that directly on there, and you can move it around. Now, definitely when you do it this way, I think there, I can see right now there's one slight disadvantage, but it's not a terrible one, which is that you are going to have to control your contrast in part in the gradient map, although you could probably very easily add another control over the top. And you can go ahead and save this, call this new, and save it as a, oops, where am I doing it? I haven't done this for a while. There you go. And you can name this my black and white, and it will go into your presets, so you can always find it. You can put it into a particular folder. Okay, so let's just go ahead and compare, and I'll sign off. So this is the second method of the black and white gradient map, and this with the tool layers is the first method. So I don't see any obvious disadvantages or advantages, so you have two ways to experiment. I'll keep on doing some research and see what I can tell you. Have fun with gradient maps. They can be realistic, they can be crazy. They also, by the way, have masks. So final thing I'll show you, of course. You can do the same thing that we have done before. We'll do a quick selection of the bird and the let's not do it that way. Okay, forgive me, I'm going to be a little bit quick. Oops, I'm on the wrong layer. Okay, that was the error for this one. Let's do object selection, and I'm not sure exactly what it's going to select, but we'll go ahead and just try it. Oh, are you not happy with me? There we go. Let's just select the subject. That'll work for now. And notice that I can, on my gradient map, oops, I'll just do it on the simple one because it's a single one. So I can, on the gradient map, I can create a mask just with Option Delete, and I can make that bird the only thing in color. I can also, of course, invert it and make just the bird in black and white, which I don't like quite as much. Okay, I'm going to stop there while I'm ahead and have fun with gradient maps.